Let's talk about who are the Kurds. Kurds are a very ancient nation in the region, and actually there are archaeological findings that has been founded in the area that, for example, beer that you guys love it so much, the first time has been discovered there, and it's very interesting. It's a group of Canadian archaeologists who found that the beer was produced among Kurdish people in the area, but the way that they concluded that it was Kurds, it was very interesting. So first they had looked at, they were Guptis, and then they had looked about, okay, who could be. So it was an exclusion solution that when they could not connect it to anybody, then they said, yeah, it was Kurds actually, that the beer was discovered by them. And then Kurds been divided into four countries after the First World War, when the big powers started to draw the borderline between all those small countries that we have it today on the map, Kuwait, Iraq, basically when the Ottoman Empire was vanishing. And according to Lausanne Protocol, there was supposed to be a united Kurdistan, an area for the Kurdish people, but after 10 months, they changed it to Sevres Protocol, and then they divided Kurdistan between the countries. The majority are in that part that is in Turkey, South Turkey, which is, we call it the north part of Kurdistan, Bakur. And then second biggest part is in Iran, and this is what we call it the eastern part of Kurdistan. And the third biggest part is in Iraqi Kurdistan, which is in the north part of Iraq, and that's what we call South Kurdistan. The last part is in north part of Syria, that's what we call West Kurdistan. And in Kurdish is Bakur, Roshalat, Bashur, and Rojava. And I'm sure that you have heard a lot about the two words, Rojava and Bashur, because today in media, mostly they are referring to Syrian Kurdistan as Rojava, to Iraqi Kurdistan as Bashur. And it's a very rich land when it comes to oil, especially, but even water, agriculture, and the wild nature. Unfortunately, both in Iraq and in Turkey, there has been a lot of destructions, and villages and forests being burned out and destroyed by the central government in Baghdad and in Ankara. In Turkey, more than 4,000 villages have totally destroyed. And even today, the South Turkey is a war zone, just like Syrian, but nobody talks about it. So the dryness today that we see, it has not been there. And then Kurds today, they are, the majority are Muslims, but once upon a time, Kurds has been Yazidi. So what happens to Yazidi today is exactly what happened to Kurds when Islam invaded the area. And they converted people by force to their religion. It says that, I haven't seen the letter, but they say there is a letter from the second Caliph of Islam when they invaded the area. He had written back home that the paradise that God had promised us, with a lot of greens, vegetables, fruits, trees, and beautiful women with blue eyes and nice skin and hair, is here, and come and get your share. So from being originally all Kurdish people, Yazidi, they have converted to Islam, majority, but there are some who believes in Christianity, and some who believes in Judaism, and a small minority that are left of Yazidi, and they are Yazidi Kurds. that was attacked by ISIS. And the Kurds are the biggest minority in the world without their own state. It's estimated around 45 to 50 millions with all four parts. Many Kurds have been displaced to different areas, so that's why you can even find groups of Kurds that were living in Lebanon. Or in Istanbul, you have around 1 million or more, and even in other places. And also in Siberia, because a small part of Kurdistan also ended up to be in, at that time, Soviet Union. And Stalin has moved many Kurds to Siberia. So there is a lot of spreading out of the Kurds. But today, because of the political issue and because of those central regime in those four countries, Iran, Iraq, Turkey, and Syria, Kurds have been spread out to entire world, actually. You can't find any country in the world where you cannot find any Kurds who have migrated or escaped these countries and seek asylum in those countries, because they have been forbidden to speak Kurdish, which is their mother tongue language, and Kurdish language is an Indo-European language. If you look at the tree of the language for Indo-European, the English, the Anglo-Saxon, the German language comes from the left branches of the tree, and Kurdish comes from the lower part of the lower branch of the right side. That's why you may find many similar words. And the first word actually that I recognize here in Wuj was brat. Brat, brother. Bra in Kurdish is also brother. And many other words that I can, hear, but few. And even in Swedish language there are, for example, and in English, cat, kat in Kurdish. Kettle is kettle, and for boiling water. So yeah, I mean, we don't need to go into this, but this is about the language and the area of Kurdistan today. If you could put Germany and Great Britain together, or France and state of Texas together, this is the area that we are talking about, to give you an idea how big is the area of Kurdish people, or the region that is called Kurdistan, which is located between the two chain of mountain, the Zagros mountain and Pontus Taranos mountain chain of mountains. What is interesting about Kurdistan, they are really peaceful people, I would say. Although the world has put the stamp on Kurds as a terrorist, like they call, for example, PKK or YPG terrorists because of political agenda, actually. It is not true. When you look at the history of Kurds in Kurdistan, you can always find the period of wars and gaps of peace. And it's very interesting to look at those gaps of peace, how Kurdish people managing or have managed to, during this short period of peace that they get, to rebuild the life, to progress, to, achieve the same level of civilized life and civilization as the central government and the neighboring countries. Although they have been, attacked all the time, but as soon as they get the piece of the gap of peace, they try to rebuild. They try to do something about their society, and it's like a small island in a really turbulent area. Although there is a lot of disagreements, corruptions, and even fighting against each other in their area, but if you look at the picture in a wider perspective, you could see really the difference. For example, when U.S. made this green zone in the north part of Iraq, so nobody could attack the Kurds or all the people, all the minorities in this area. So for the first time in the history, the recent history, Kurds got a short break of breathing, and they start, rebuild the life, and by actually starting election, parliament, and all those things that is obvious for you guys here in Poland, but this was the first time there, and it was so interesting. There was no questioning if women got the right to vote or not. Nobody put the question. It was obvious, of course. So everybody went to the box of the voting, both men and women. And when you look at the Middle Eastern country, many countries like Saudi Arabia, even today, women are not allowed to drive a car, for example. But it has never been an issue in Kurdistan. And actually, when a child is good at school, it doesn't matter if the child is a boy or a girl. Everybody dreams the child, not the girl, not the boy, but the child could become a doctor or an engineer without any differences, unlike the other countries. That even today, the youngest boy in this family decide upon, the future of the eldest sister in the family. So we are not Turks, we are not Arabs, we are totally separate identity in the region. But unfortunately, since the Second World War, the big powers, the Western world, tried by all means, by all forces, dissolve the Kurdish society and put as a piece together with the other community, which is not working. And that's what we are seeing today as a result of this forceful, dividing and sewing together. And many people are surprised by what happens today, for example, in Iraq. And I would say, why are you surprised? This has been going on for 100 years. But it's only recently the West has got interested in reporting, maybe because of, the era of IT. Because even if the journalists, the governments are not reporting, people communicate in another way together. And people get aware of what's going on. Because what happens in Iraq is nothing new for the local people. That's what has been happening for years, but nobody wanted to talk about it. And the Yazidi genocide is the fourth genocide upon Kurdish people just in the last 50, 60 years. We had another genocide in 90s. We had another one in 80s. We had another one in 70s. The gas bombing of the mountains started already in 60s. I was the last generation to be born in mountain. Actually, I was born on a Christmas day, and I got hassles in that because of that when we were living in exile in Iran, because we were celebrating the day, and they didn't like it. But maybe we should not put that one because it will be political. Sorry for that one. Just remember that. So, I always ask, okay, you see today this killing, this barbarism, but we have been facing it for so many years. To give you an example, the chemical bombing of Kurds happened in 1988 during Iran and Iraq war. But at that time, the superpower and the Western countries were supporting Saddam. So nobody talked about what happened in Halabja, how thousands and thousands of people, women and children and men, were killed. But in 1991, when there was a war between Kuwait and Iraq, and everybody was with Kuwait, all of a sudden, Saddam was the bad guy. Saddam had used chemical bomb against his own people 3 years after what happened. And I always ask, why nobody talked in 88 when it happened? Why the world started talking in 91 when it was 3 years later? So this barbarism must stop. And the only way to stop is to stop the eagerness of having more and more. Those countries who are producing weapon, stop, producing weapon, because once you produce, you have to sell it to empty your storage and to build more. And in order to empty your storage, you have to sell it. For selling, you have to create war. But if you want to create war, then you create in the land of those fabrics who are producing the weapon, not in the lands of those people who really want peace and want to live in a peaceful life. PKK, why they say it's terrorist? Because Turkey, Turkey is part of NATO. Turkey is the border between Europe and Russia. And they accept anything, without realizing that they have created a new Hitler. For years, just imagine, I'm sitting here talking to you, yeah? But I have been harassed by Turkish military on the border, by Turkish forces in Ankara and Istanbul, because I say I go to Kurdistan. Just last time when I took Pegasus airline, a Turkish airline, from Kurdistan back to Sweden, we landed in Ankara, and I knew that we had landed late. We had only half an hour between the flight. So I looked at my watch and I asked and we are talking about 5 a.m, I asked the lady, the crew lady, I said, excuse me, is the time here the same as the time in Kurdistan? Because my watch was in Kurdistan time, Just spontaneously I'm asking, is the time here is the same as in Kurdistan? Because I know how much, I want to know how long I have to run to the next flight, So early in the morning. She's looking at me angrily. Where is Kurdistan? There is no Kurdistan. Really? I said, what? Lady, where did you come from? From where did you start flying? And I'm surprised that you have passed your exams if you don't know the geography. We are talking about, forget about your political opinion. We are talking about the geographical place that you are denying. And that early morning, So I am the terrorist, but she's the civilized person with the right to go anywhere, who cannot even accept the existence of a geographical place. Forget about the people. So you tell me, who is the terrorist? Who is fighting who? I'm fighting for my own language, to be able to speak Kurdish, to be able to wear Kurdish, to be able, just to be in my own land. And she comes, make use of my existence, because she got this job, because thanks to Kurdish people who are, traveling between Europe and Kurdistan, she has a job, still she's denying. And very rudely attacking me so early in the morning. This is what we are talking about.